start, really. So today we're continuing our series in Hebrews, and today's title is The Certainty of God's Promise, and we're going to be reading from Hebrews 6:13 to 20 shortly. Liz is going to come and do that for us soon, but I just want to look at a few human promises that you may well have heard of some of these, okay? And let's just see how these human promises went. So, very famous picture, who can tell me what that is? Titanic. In 1912, Philip Franklin, who was the vice president of the White Star Line, said this. They made the Titanic. He said this. So I'm quoting, so I'm reading it. "There is no danger that Titanic will sink. This boat is unsinkable, and nothing but inconvenience will be suffered by the passengers. On hearing of the Titanic's demise," which is a very sad event, we're not poking fun at this, but we're just pointing out human promises. On hearing of the Titanic's demise, he simply said, "I do not understand it." He made a promise, as many people did. The captain of the ship was saying similar. This ship will not sink. Now I think actually there's something about human arrogance in that God didn't like. Actually, I could be wrong on that. That's just a bit of conjecture on my part. But there's something about the arrogance of man in that I don't think God liked. It reminded me a bit of almost like the Tower of Babel, or Babel, however you say that. He made a promise to the passengers it wouldn't sink, and we know the rest. A little bit more of a light-hearted one. Who are these lovely guys? The Beatles. We're showing our age there. The Beatles. In 1962, this little-known Liverpool band auditioned for Decca Records. An executive heard them, and he said to the other executives, "The Beatles have no future in show business. Groups are out. Four-piece groups with guitars, particularly, are finished. Do not sign this band." They went on to do pretty well, didn't they? And they went on to do, they may not be your cup of tea, but commercially they had phenomenal success. I do really like them, actually. He made them a promise that they were finished before they even started. That wasn't a very good one. Now, this one you'll probably know, a more recent one. Who's this? Michael Fish. I'm going to read this because I want to get it exactly right. He said this in a news bulletin in 1987. And I can't do accents or voices, so I'm just going to do it, pretend he was from Darlington, right? He said this: "Earlier on today, a woman rang the BBC and said she'd heard that there was a hurricane on the way. Well, if you're watching, don't worry, there isn't. Just a few hours later, gale force winds of 122 miles per hour battered Britain." And again, it's actually very sad. 19 people were killed from that result of that hurricane. And I don't think there's any blame attached to Michael Fish on that particularly. But he made a promise to the country. And yet, how wrong was he? Even with scientific equipment that was available to him, much more scientific equipment than was available to the people of the Titanic. Science and scientific equipment is not certain. It's just not. We know that from the IT here. It's just not. Right? It's just not. So far today, it's been pretty good though. Okay, what does this tell us? It tells us a universal truth. That even if our intentions are good, even if they really are, we intend to keep our promises, actually there's very little guarantee of that. Very little certainty of human promises. Okay, so let's have a look at the text. Hebrews 6:13 to 20. And Liz, could you come and read this, please? And weren't these guys brilliant in worship today? Just awesome. As I say so often, right, we recognise that there's talent in their musical abilities, right? That there is talent, but it was more than talent. It was spirit-led. It's God in you leading us in worship, so thank you. Anyway, if you can read that.
That's Hebrews 6:13 to 20. "When God made his promise to Abraham, since there was no one greater for him to swear by, he swore by himself, saying, 'I will surely bless you and give you many descendants.' And so, after waiting patiently, Abraham received what was promised. People swear by someone greater than themselves, and the oath confirms what is said and puts an end to all argument. Because God wanted to make the unchanging nature of his purpose very clear to the heirs of what was promised, he confirmed it with an oath. God did this so that by two unchangeable things, in which it is impossible for God to lie, we who have fled to take hold of the hope set before us may be greatly encouraged. We have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure. It enters the inner sanctuary behind the curtain, where our forerunner, Jesus, has entered on our behalf. He has become a high priest forever in the order of Melchizedek.
Thank you, Liz. Now, I'm going to mention Melchizedek or Melchizedek for two reasons. One, because I'm just really curious as to how Haley signs Melchizedek, so I'm going to watch this. And two, I'm not going to talk about many more today. Probably Haley's relieved about that. We're going to do a whole talk on Melchizedek next week. And what an intriguing and mysterious person Melchizedek is. And I've been studying him for years, actually. He's always intrigued me. And can I just give you a real encouragement for next week? I still have very little idea of who he actually is, despite all this studying. So that's an encouragement to come next week and see me having absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, and I don't know what will. But I think I've got some ideas. That's all it is, though, some ideas. But we will have a very practical application to Melchizedek next week. Okay, sorry, I mentioned again, didn't I? We'll just call him Mel. Mel's quite cool. All right, so what can we learn from this Bible verse? Some main points. One, God swore on himself. What a really cool thing to do. It says God swore on his own name. He swore by himself, to himself. So you've probably seen these programs on TV where, you know, they're in the court case and they have to swear on the Bible. Or at school, when I'm doing some supply teaching at school, kids will often say, I swear down, I swear my mother's life, I swear down, I swear my dog's life, or, you know, they swear on something greater than who they are. Right? And what that's really saying, when someone says, I swear on my mother's life, what they're actually saying is, you can't trust me, really. But because I'm saying, well, you know, I wouldn't do anything against my mum, on this you can trust me. That's what they're saying, actually, isn't it? You know, you can't really take me seriously most of the time, but when I say on my mother's life, I really mean it. But God swore on himself, because there is no greater name for him to swear on, to make an oath to make a promise to. So he swore to himself, and that's really important. Because we know, and if you don't know, right, you can believe this. God is all good and all powerful. And we know that. We believe that, don't we? Yeah, there's nothing wrong. We believe that. But God knows that too. And you might think, well, of course he does, but actually that's a really important point. God has perfect knowledge of who he is and his capabilities. So, if God is with us, and we believe he is through the Holy Spirit, we can get fearful in situations, we can get anxious in situations, but because God knows he is all-powerful and more powerful than anything else, actually he will never be fearful or anxious in those situations with us. He will never suffer from a lack of self-confidence. Because you see people, don't you, who they may have a lot of ability, but actually a lack of self-confidence stops them carrying out to their full potential the ability they've been given. We've seen that, and we know that in people, right? That's never going to happen to God. He knows perfectly who he is and what his capabilities are. And that's really important, because when he's with you, he's not going to suddenly look at your circumstances and think, I can't deal with that. I can't handle that. I'm not ready for this. God is totally able to handle any circumstance you are going through. And let me just have another word here. God is easily totally able to handle any circumstance you're going through. Easily able to handle. Because he's not just the most powerful by a little margin of victory. He's massively more powerful than any other force in the world. So, if you know, whatever situation you're in, if you've got someone who's just a pain at work, God's so much more powerful than that person. If you've got the devil himself and an army of demons faced up against you, God's easily able to solve that. It's not like this battle, you know, of like yin and yang and right and wrong. God he can solve that with, you know, the click of a finger. just on his say-so. And that's really important. There's no one greater than God, and he knows it. And that's why his promises are so good. Nothing. We've sang it today. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Well, the answer we know is no one. No one. God doesn't win 5-4 after extra time. He wins 5-0. Do you know what I mean? He doesn't just win. It's an easy win. That's why we can take so much encouragement, joy and peace in who he is. If God makes a promise, it will come to pass. Now, I just want to mention about unconditional and conditional promises. Because sometimes God will say, if you, then I will. Do you understand that? That's different from an unconditional promise. We'll talk about that a bit more. But sometimes God will say, if you, then I will. That means it's something for us to do. That's not God breaking his promise. That's God making a kind of deal with you, all right? Abraham had to wait patiently for what he was promised. That's a direct quote from the text Liz read out in Hebrews 6. Abraham had to wait patiently. And that's an annoying word, isn't it? God, grant me patience and grant me it now. That's what we're like sometimes, isn't it? I want to be patient. Make me patient now, Lord. He had to wait patiently. Now, I'm not going to go into the promises Abraham received from God. If you want to know more, start reading Genesis from about 15 to 25, and you can find all about Abraham's promises that he was given from God. But what we can work out from those verses, Genesis 15 to 25, is Abraham was promised something by God, which means it's going to happen. It's not going to happen in Abraham's timescale. Read the story. Abraham tried to make it happen in his timescale, caused an utter mess that the world still suffers consequences from today, actually. Right? Literally. Read that. Abraham waited 25 years for the promise from God to come. He was given a promise at 75 years of age. It came true when he was 100. He waited 25 years. He waited patiently. Now, I've got no doubt, right, that God could somehow just zap patience into you and zap patience into me. Guess what? He rarely does it that way. How does God develop patience in us? By putting us in situations that cause us to develop our patience. And it's so annoying. And you'll do a little bit better at it, and you think, I'm quite a patient guy now. And then something happens, and I realise I'm not that patient after all, and God will allow me to go through something else. And it might be painful. Guess what? God lets us go through painful things, right? That doesn't mean God doesn't love you anymore. You stop listening to your prayers, or you're out of his great plan. No, it doesn't mean that at all. It means he's developing fruit in you. Patience is one of the fruits of the Spirit. Stan talked about these a little bit last week. And like real fruit, like physical fruit, fruits take time to grow, right? Apples don't just appear in one day. They take time to grow. Spiritual fruit is the same. God puts us in situations that develops the fruits of the Holy Spirit. And patience is one of them. I wish it wasn't like that sometimes, but that's the reality. So what are you patiently waiting on? What promises of God have you got? We want to be real about this. We want to make this real. We don't just want to do a Bible study that's based in theory. The theory is important, but it's got to apply to real life. Maybe you're waiting a long time for something. As I've said, it doesn't mean, you've suddenly got it wrong or you're out of God's plan. Well, he's with you. But he will do it in his timing. Abraham tried to force the issue. He got it wrong. It happened on God's timing. We have to persevere, actually. Patience and perseverance go together so well. And we don't like it, but it's the reality. We have to persevere. But can I just say this? Patience doesn't necessarily mean doing nothing. It doesn't mean doing nothing. So let me give an example. I'm going to give you a real-life example. In 1999, which is such a long time ago now, before he was born. Is that right? So think of that, Ian. I was an adult, right? I'm referring to a story in 1999, and I was still an adult then, and you weren't even born. I felt God speak to me about going into church eldership, church leadership in 1999. And I thought, well, hey, I'll start the new millennium as a church leader, year 2000. 14 years I waited, not very patiently, but with a lot of perseverance, before a church before this. In 2013, I was finally asked to go to church leadership, and then 2 years after that, I went full-time in church leadership. 14 years. And I'm not saying this for any sort of good or bad reason. I genuinely kind of thought, oh, I believe God said that. Other people were starting to say similar, so the secret confirmation came, and I thought, yeah, 2000, I was going to that. Didn't happen. It didn't happen. But in that 14 years, I was as patient as I was able to be, but I prepared for it. I started reading books. I started about leadership. I started observing other church leaders, sometimes looking at how they did things brilliantly. And if I'm honest, sometimes looking at things and thinking, I wouldn't have done it like that. Because we can learn from each other's good points and mistakes, can't we? You know, I went to courses, I went to conferences, I studied websites, all of that sort of thing, right? And then eventually came to pass. So maybe you've got a great calling, right? Maybe God's calling you to go and be a missionary in India. Who knows? It could be somebody's room right now. God might be saying that to you right now. Who knows? It might not happen for 14 years, or if you're like Abraham, 25 years. Or if you're like the Israelites, 40 years in the desert, right, for Joshua and Caleb. That doesn't mean you don't have to do anything. You can start studying the language, you can start studying the culture, you can start, reading into what it means to go and plant over there, go and be a missionary over there, go and do church over there. You can find out all of these things. You can maybe make some preparatory visits, you can go and speak to people who've done it before. Do you see what I'm getting at? Being patient doesn't mean being passive. You can be proactive in your patience. Now, there's only so much you can do, obviously, because in the end, God either, makes it happen, or we've heard wrong and it doesn't happen. And that's just a little point I want to make. If you feel God's spoken to you, but it's not rooted in the Bible, I believe God does that. He does speak through the Holy Spirit. We have prophecy. That's a gift. But if it never comes to pass, actually we just heard wrong. It wasn't God who got it wrong, it was us. I just want to point that out. Anyway, I'm rambling on a bit. So, let's move on. We need to be patient for God's promises. But, this is the good bit. God has an unchanging nature and therefore unchanging promises. What did he say in Hebrews 6? He doesn't lie. We have a God who doesn't lie. He's incapable of lying. Sometimes we say God can do anything. Actually, he can't do anything. He can't lie. He can't sin. I wouldn't want a God who could do anything, because that's not a very good God in my opinion. By his very nature he can't lie. God the Father can't sin. But if he promises something, no matter how unlikely that promise looks to us in human eyes, the promise for Abraham and his wife Sarah looked impossible in human eyes. In fact, probably was impossible, the promises they received. And I'm trying not to give too much away because I'd love you to go and read the story if you don't know it. And yet it came to pass in God's perfect timing. He's utterly trustworthy, he's utterly capable, he's utterly powerful, he's utterly good. He knows all things. We can rely on his promises. In fact, it says, it's like an anchor to our soul. That's how good his promises are, an anchor to our soul. When we're getting blown around by the circumstances of life, we've got an anchor for our soul in God and his promises. When the doodah hits the fan, when it hits the fan, just remember you've got an anchor for your soul. Oh God, my anchor's not in science, it's not in technology, it's not even in my friends or my family or my own abilities. It's in God and his promises. It's in God and his promises. That's so encouraging to know. It's so just satisfying to know what God said will happen when he wills it to happen. And he never usually gives us a time scale, does he? It's so annoying, isn't it? He'll give you a great promise. He doesn't say on the 3rd of June 2021 this will happen. You've just got to hang in and keep persevering. He's gone, we're not. So what does God promise? We've been banging on about how great his promises are and how we can rely on him at the exact minute he will deliver them. But what does he promise? Well, apparently, and this was done from some great research on Google, but apparently there are over 3,000 biblical promises from God to his people. So are you ready for 3,000 promises? I'm only going to do 5 actually, or we'd still be here on Thursday night. We don't know where we're supposed to be Thursday night anyway though, so it probably wouldn't matter. So here's one of God's promises. He knows you intimately and he loves you unconditionally. That is a promise. He will love you unconditionally forever. If you are a follower of him, his love for you is unconditional. Now he doesn't always like some of our behaviour. He will discipline us. He will tweak who we are, gently, painfully, but he loves us unconditionally. And parents, you understand that. Our children sometimes do our heads in. That's the technical phrase. You'll find that in a parent book. But we still love them unconditionally. We might not like what they do or what they say. I tell you what, when you're having a side, I digress a moment. I went to a birthday party on Friday night, someone's 60th. And my son, who's 23 now, went to the bar and said, "Paid for your dinner, Dad." And I thought, I must be getting old. That's all I could think. I was like, appreciative, but I'm thinking, God, I must be getting older. My son's now paying for me. You know, what's going on here? So I was kind of pleased, because I saved about 12 quid, but like kind of insulted at the same time. Anyway, God loves you unconditionally. If that's not an anchor for your soul, sometimes we don't even love ourselves, do we? But God loves us unconditionally. He formed you with purpose and for a purpose. He has promised things for you to do in his kingdom that he only wants you to do. I tell you what, if I'm ever a bit low on my self-esteem, I just read a promise like that. He's got good works for us to do personally. Like the God of the universe who can do all things has earmarked something for me to do. How mad's that? He's earmarked things for you to do. He promises you things to do that he's chosen you out of 7 billion people in the world to do. And it could be the smallest thing, like smiling at a neighbour. But that might be the only smile they get that day. You don't know what that might do to their lives. Who knows what that might do? But he's got a purpose for you. Number 3, he's promised abundant life. Not a full life, not a busy life, not an easy life, but an abundant life. That's what I want, an abundant life, lived with him and lived for him. That's a promise for us. And in that life, he is with you always. He's with you always. What a promise. And for me, the ultimate promise, he has an eternal home in heaven. An eternal home. Or a room in a home. We can debate that. There's lots of debates about that. Do we have a mansion each? Have we a room in a mansion? What's going on? Is it a new earth? Is it a new earth? I'm not that bothered. But wherever God is, when I snuff it, that's where I want to be. It doesn't matter if it's Redcar. Where he is, I'll be as well. And that's all that matters to me. Can you imagine that? If it is in Redcar, it'll be lemon tops for free. All day long. How great is that? Maybe that's not your version of heaven, but it's mine. It's definitely mine. Wow. An eternal home in heaven with him. That for me is great. But what about us? Okay? What about us? Because we all sort of, or I did, laughed along a bit at the record executive who said the Beatles, who are they? They'll never amount to anything. Don't sign them, I promise you they'll come to nothing. We all sort of laughed along a bit, Michael Fish. But actually, I'm just speaking to myself here. So I'll say I rather than you or we. But I break promises all the time. Don't intend to, but I do. What about this one? I'll be there in 5 minutes. Who's ever said that one? And actually, not there in 5 minutes. I've done that one. fact, I did that one yesterday. I was late for something yesterday. I had to ring me. I'll call you later. Well, I didn't say how much later, so maybe I didn't break it too badly.
Might be me.
Yeah. Let's keep in touch. I say that, and I broke that one. I'll definitely do that tomorrow. Listen, ladies, when us men say we will do it tomorrow, there's no need to remind us every 6 months. We will do it tomorrow, right? And I'll pray for you. Now that one stings a bit, doesn't it? I've said, probably to you, actually, I'll pray for you. And do you know what I meant to? I meant to do it. I meant to do it later that night. But like, you know, I'd be heading off to Northland, or I'd be out at the gym, or I would just forget. Because I'm human. But that one does sting a bit, doesn't it? I'll pray for you. And I'm just, you know, it's not confession time, but I've broke those 5 probably in the last week, never mind in my lifetime, if I'm honest. Because we do, don't we? So, I just want to give some little tips on those, really. Because in the Bible, and I think it's in Matthew, I think it follows on from the Sermon on the Mount and all of that. Jesus says, actually don't swear on anything. Just let your yes be yes and your no be no. That's how trustworthy we should be. Where when we say to someone, yes, I will do that, then yes, I will do it. And no, I'm not doing that. Should be the end of it. No, I'm not doing that. Yes is yes, and no is no. So listen. We need lots of people in church to say yes to things. Don't hear this wrong. Right? We need lots of people, all of you, say yes to lots of stuff. And that's important. But just be careful about what you say yes to. Because actually, God sees all things, which is both a great encouragement and a bit scary. Thank God he loves us, literally. Because he sees all things, he knows what we're really like. Just, before you say yes to something, just think, will my diary actually allow me to do that? Check your diary. Be organised with your time. I really encourage that. It's just a practical thing. But just be organised with your time. We all double book sometimes. But look at your diaries. Think, can I actually do that? Look at your abilities. Just be honest about that. If someone asks me to wash up, I can wash up. I'm quite good at washing up. If someone asks me to do the PA and AV, I'll have a go, but I will point out to them, that's not my skill, right? And they need to know that, because I'm not going to be great at that. If someone asks me to do what Lisa and Haley are doing, I will say no. Because if I tried that, it wouldn't help anyone, least of all me. So don't be afraid to say no. Just think, is that what actually God's asking me to do? Because even something we are able to do and have the time to do, God might actually not be asking you to do it. And that's a bit of a mind bend, isn't it? Hang on, I'm very able to do that. I'm available. But actually, is God asking me to do that? Now, don't spend too long thinking, is God asking me to wash up or not? Do you know what I mean? But maybe something's bigger than that. Don't forget to consult God. It is important. And don't be afraid to say no. I'm just going to say this to you. Some of you need to get better, perhaps, at saying no. There's nothing wrong in saying no. I've had to learn to say no, and I still sort of can feel that pang of guilt. Do you know what I mean? Oh, but, you know, I could do it, and I should do it. Well, who says you could? Who says you should? Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you need to be able to say no. Maybe that's something you need to get better at. Maybe something you can get some prayer about today. If you can say yes, say yes. If you have said yes to something, and as time and circumstances change and develop, you realise, actually, I'm not going to be able to keep that promise, let the person know as soon as you can. It's just very small practical things, isn't it? But it makes a massive difference. It makes a massive difference. And I'm going to say this is why these things make such a difference. Because if God can trust you in the small things, he will allow you into bigger things. Does that make sense? If he can trust you with the small, he knows he'll then be able to trust you with bigger and bigger and bigger. Do the small things well. And if you're not going to do the small things well, make sure people know that you're not doing them. It's just communication sometimes, isn't it? And here's another very practical point. I'm almost finished. If someone has broken a promise to you, just remember they're in good company. They're in your company. Because who he has never broken a promise? You know, it's that speck and log and all that, isn't it? Forgive and move on. Forgive and move on. Because actually we're all in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. So, we're coming into land. We're going to pray now. And maybe you could, well, you can either sing, you can just strum, whatever you feel is appropriate. Is that all right, Liz and Dave? Whatever you want to do. I didn't consult with you beforehand, I just forgot. So, this is who can get some prayer, right? If you are here today and you think, actually, I'm not following Jesus. I'm not in receipt of these 3,000 plus great promises that will change my life and change what happens to me after I die. If you would love to choose to follow Jesus today and be a recipient of his amazing promises, you can sort that today. You can deal with that today. Just get some prayer with Alan and Sue and whoever else is available to pray. Or maybe you're waiting on a particular promise and you'd like some strengthening the waiting and preparing. Maybe you'd like some prayer for that. Because let's be honest, you know, we can put on this stiff upper lip, yes, God promised me something and I'm waiting in the Lord. But actually it's a pain in the backside sometimes, isn't it? It's hard and you lose track of what he said and you lose sight and think, is it ever going to happen? Well, I do anyway. If you just want some prayer for strengthening for a big promise, or you want some more clarity on a promise, just get some prayer. I'm not preempting what God will say, that's up to God, but you can pray, get some prayer for that. Or if you struggle with keeping promises, to be able to say the right thing and then to keep to it. If you know that you find it hard to say no sometimes, you know, you can get prayer for that. You can have the Holy Spirit enabling you to just be able to say, actually, Colin, I won't do that, thank you. I'm not able to do that. That's okay. It's fine.